Okay, so what I was able to do in the 1.6 dev CBOM branch, I added basically the um, the spec, the IBM CBOM spec to CycloneDX 1.6, but did not do so in a modular way, kind of like what. So it's not in a separate schema file. That's going to be some other ongoing work that we're going to do within CycloneDX. We need to discuss how, in general, modularity is going to work. So it's kind of a much bigger topic. So for the time being, I kind of merged it in to 1.6, pretty much just the way it was. I did run across, let's see, I did run across, and I need to fix it. I did run across a issue with the one of the enums, and I don't know if there's going to be more issues because I got to fix the one first. But the enum for curves actually supposedly has a duplicate. We use AJV, which is a JavaScript library and command line utility to validate all of our schemas, and we do so in strict mode. And it came up with a warning saying the schema is invalid because it has the enum has a duplicate item. 153 and 154 are identical. Okay. Let's see. I don't know what where line 153 and 154 would be. They are back to back, so I guess I'll just, oh wait, right here.
There are 3 duplicated teams. Or
Yeah.
2 duplicates.
Okay, so something got pasted in a couple times. Was there supposed to be more than was there supposed to be like a S1, S2, S3 type of thing?
Don't think so. It seems to be actually all those 3 are duplicates from the
Oh,
one.
they are duplicates. Yeah, because the original is up here, isn't it?
Yeah. So then
Okay.
it's just, yeah.
Oops. Okay. Let's see if that works. Um, that's interesting. I don't know why it's complaining about that, unless it says the format is ignored. That's interesting. And timestamp.
We also, I think we use the same tool actually to validate it, but probably not in with the S switch.
Okay. Yeah, there's nothing wrong with that. Hmm. Yeah, I don't know why it's complaining about that. I'm not sure. That's interesting. um, shouldn't have done it on 1.5, did it? Does the same thing for 1.5. That's interesting. Okay, maybe that's a defect in AJV. I'm not sure. Okay, so it looks like that's all fixed then. Let me just go ahead and commit this.
So if we have, let's say, emerging from the discussion here, updates, we would basically create pull requests to this branch, right?
Yep, you got it. You got it. So let's see. Does everybody know where that branch is? Specification 16 dev CBOM. I'll put it in the Zoom chat window. And I'll also put it in Slack channel. Where's my Slack? No. Wrong Slack's workspace. Let's see.
I think you edited there last time already, but yeah.
Did I? Okay. Yep, it's there. Okay. Awesome. Lars won't make it today. Okay. Okay. So what is the next thing the group wants to do? So we've looked at the use cases. Nicholas, was there any updates to the blog post?
I think the last time we were talking about the blog post, the to do was that you wanted to give it to Kelly, I guess that's her name. From our side, it was like finished from the writing side, but we have to get clearance. I think Basil asked at our manager and got the message that we have to get clearance for that, but should be straightforward process. So yeah, other than
Okay.
that, I think that's it.
Yeah, we just need someone improving it, and then it should be fine. Might take a couple of days for that, but
Hey, Nicholas, are you on our Slack channel, Slack workspace, or no? Oh yeah, I see you now. Okay. I was spelling your name the German way, I guess. Sorry about that. I'm so used to spelling Nicholas Duster, who's a CycloneDX contributor and German citizen. So used to spelling his name that. Okay. Basel, Matt, and Kayla. Okay. I'm just making some introductions here. Okay, let's see. Where's the link to that blog article? Let me try to dig that up. Google Drive. Cyclone. Okay. So I just added you all to a Slack conversation. So Kayla is a UX researcher. She's also a volunteer for the OWASP CycloneDX project, largely responsible for a lot of the messaging and UX work on the website, that sort of thing. But she does a lot of content writing as well. So added her to the loop just so she can get her input. But I think it's actually in a pretty good state right now, other than the one thing that we talked about last time. But she's fairly responsive too as well. So I believe she's on the west coast of the United States, so it might take her a little bit to. I think it's only like 20 after 6 in the morning for her right now.
Okay,
But I'm
great.
sure we'll
Thank you.
hear from her today. Yep. Was there? I know last time there was some. There was a mention, I think, Nicholas, that you all had a conversation with MITRE regarding some of the work groups that they're standing up for cryptography. Is there any more information on that, or anything that would be relevant to the discussions here?
I mean, there's not really anything nothing happened like really actionable there, but the group got a little bit bigger. They sent out like they set up also a Slack channel and sent out notifications to, I don't know, people in Microsoft and or the other people called from, I don't know, this other Sandbox AQ. Yes, so like people coming together around the crypto scanning and inventory stuff, but there's nothing yet happened in regards to also pointing into the CBOM group or like working and having opinion.
Okay, very good. There was an interesting discussion on LinkedIn yesterday where Alan Friedman, who is currently at CISA and largely responsible for the U.S. government's push for software development materials, their CISA is also going to be working on hardware bill of materials, which from a naming perspective isn't a thing. They just call them bills of materials. But the interesting thing about this CBOM work is there was a comment about like hardware tokens, right? Hardware devices that support cryptography. And I'm like, yeah, that would be theoretically possible, right? We can have an SBOM, or we could have a hardware bill of material that had the inventory. Maybe it's like a USB type device that supported various cryptographic functions, and we could absolutely specify that in a hardware bill of materials. So there was some interesting use cases for this that I think would be worthy to kind of mention in that article, and then maybe in some of our discussions as well, because it's not just about the software. It's a little bit more than that, which is really interesting to me.
Yeah, and that's something that is already supported and in the CycloneDX hardware bill of material, right?
Yep.
Yeah. How is hardware then modeled in that case? Is it a component as well?
It is. There's a component type called hardware, and then we have a formal taxonomy for device. The taxonomy is, are you familiar with our property taxonomy?
Not into that, no.
Okay, there's, let me see if I can just pull it up real quick. Let's see. All right, so there's a property taxonomy. So yes, we actually do have a component type called device, but then within device, you can specify properties, and these are registered properties that are specific to devices. So everything from quantity of those things to SKUs to serial numbers, um, certifications, whether it's FCC or some other kind of international government agency that does the certifying, all the different GS1 standards for UPC type codes and stuff like that. So um, yeah, it could be kind of a really interesting combination of hardware plus cryptography,
Yeah.
and then obviously software plus cryptography. These are really interesting use cases that we could do here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's interesting. Then could have a device that depends on crypto assets as we define, for example.
Yep, absolutely.
Yeah.
That would be one really interesting example that that I think once we have the spec actually fleshed out a little bit, and we're getting close to release, and we're starting to work on the guide, because having the spec is one thing, but actually showing people how to properly use it is something else. It'd be interesting to have maybe a hardware example or two in the guide. So
yeah. So maybe one thing related I was maybe also wanted to bring in here is there were some White House OMB and national security memorandums, I think, about cryptographic inventory, and they specify a couple of attributes actually that need to be captured as an inventory as they want to see it. So they talk about cryptographic systems, for example, right, which I think can also include hardware. So maybe it would be worth to go over the list there, because I think not everything is related to crypto itself and crypto properties that we have specified, but if we can just to see if this can be addressed already with the concepts.
do you have the link for that
Yeah,
that post?
I have it. I can send it on the
Okay.
on the chat. Right, and there is under section 2,
section 2,
and then a bit down there, next page, I think. Yeah, here.
okay, so
Page there they have for each information system or asset, including in the ONCD CISA inventory, agencies must provide the following, right? And there they basically describe what must be included. So they have this
FISMA system identifier.
yeah.
Okay. FIPS system categorization.
Low, moderate, high.
If an HVA,
I think that's a high value asset.
high value asset. Okay. The HVA identifier. Okay. These can all be done with properties.
Yeah.
Because they're going to be specific to the United States government. So,
then the next point I think is more to the CBOM extension.
Yeah.
Like the crypto algorithm used that can be described with CBOM.
Yep.
A description
Service
of the
provided.
service provided. There might be also a property, right?
Yep.
Length of keys. That's also CBOM.
Yeah, you have all that. If cryptographic systems are part of a software package, indicate whether the software package is commercial off the shelf, the name of the vendor or developer. Okay, operating systems. Okay. So, yeah.
And they also, in the next page, they have some more. Point 8 is
yeah, the agency. Partially operated cloud service provider. Okay. Government operated CSP. Right, okay. Life cycle characteristics of the data contained in the systems and types of data, right? Okay. Okay, all right. And how long the data and associated metadata need protection. Oh, that's interesting. Interesting. Okay.
It's time to leave, right? That's quite important for quantum safe, right? If your data is only has to live for 1 day,
Right,
or for
exactly.
years, then it depends if you need to use quantum safe crypto already.
Yeah. Does the spec support that? Probably not, right? Because it doesn't support data, but 1.5 now does. So, okay. And maybe that's a use case that we figure out too, right? How would we represent? So we've got a new type of component in Cyclone called data, and how could we specify that data is then encrypted by, AES 256? I don't know if we're there yet in terms of being able to represent that.
Yeah. We have this related crypto material, right? Where you can say this is secured by an algorithm. I think that might be one possibility. But that's not data. That's not general data. Like it's more tokens and keys.
Right.
Another option could be like data has a dependency on a crypto asset, like an algorithm.
Right. Let me just generate the JSON schema real quick, or the documentation and all that. I'll pull that up. Come on. Okay, so here's the current 1.6 with the CBOM stuff embedded in it. So, we've got the components, and then of course we've got the crypto properties, etc. And then for every component type, we have the cryptographic asset. So all that is kind of in there, but I wanted to draw your attention to, let's go back into type. So we have a new type called data. And then we have a new object also called data, and this is an array. So it'd be interesting to be able to say that this data right here, and it could be either embedded in the bill of material or could be just here's a link to the data. How we could tie this together in with the cryptography stuff that we have. Now we could do it one of two ways. We could say this data is protected by this cryptographic asset, or we can say this cryptographic assets protects this data. I'm a big favor of doing it one way and one way only, because when you do that, you lose a little bit of flexibility, but you also prevent people from shooting themselves in the foot, which, it kind of goes to the prescriptive nature of Cyclone. So we could do it either way, but I think it's a use case that we need to figure out.
And this is then part of the discussion for later versions, since this relationship would extend the dependency relationship just with additional context secured by or protected by? Or
Yeah,
do you think
we
it's
want to get this in 1.6, yeah.
You want to get this in or
Yeah.
won't?
Yeah, we will. Yeah, I want to get this into
Okay.
1.6.
Okay.
Because having a CBOM is great, but if I can't, the next question, especially from an operational context perspective, is, well, how can I represent how my data is protected?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't necessarily know if we're there yet, because we've got this, which allows us to represent data. So we've got the type of data, so I can have source code, configuration, just a general data set, definition or other. I can have different data classifications. I can have different data governance owners, right? Who are the owners of the various parts of the life cycle for that. And then for this, let's see, asset type, where's the related secured by? So yeah, this specifies the mechanism by which the cryptographic crypto asset is secured by.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is like, yeah, like I think Basel said, it's like, one cryptographic asset protecting another, which is fine.
Exactly.
But do we want to?
I mean, for me, it's just a question if we have this relationship now between like different classes of or types of components or assets, then it's like overwriting the dependency connection just in a different context. You know what I mean? We use it here in this context just as a sub referencing just between crypto assets. So it does not actually overwrite the dependency tree or relation. But if we now do it between data, and so it feels like there's then two ways to describe relationship with the dependencies. And if you want to add like a specific context, then you do this secure by, but it's not that obvious. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Right. Grab my dog. He's whining a little bit to come down. Hey, buddy, come on. Oh, he is the heaviest chihuahua on the planet. The guy is so tiny, yet, I mean, he's just like solid. It's like a bag of bricks. Let's see.
Mm. Would this translate if we have related crypto material that has a secured by? Would this translate to data as well? To have a secured by attribute or property?
Well, secured by is, I think by is maybe the wrong. I don't know. Related crypto material properties.
I mean, this whole relationship feels like that what Matt said in the beginning, that you have a relationship and now it's type, not only type users, it's type secured by, and you add additional context to the relationship by saying which mechanism is used, and then you have a reference to the algorithm, for example. So, but because we had a discussion before, and I thought this is something for 2.0 version or later version. So thought that's why I ask if we want to put it in this relationship still in that.
Well, we've got
1.6.
we've got the dependency type right here. So we did add this. So this is going to go, I think, in 1.6. because it is
Okay.
optional and it's not going to break. I don't think it'll break anything. So we have this if we want to continue using that.
That'd be awesome, I think. Sorry.
Yeah. Matt, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think this will break anything, correct?
No, it's just an add. I mean, it's like any other thing. We added another field. It just adds context to the relationship. And now we have a strong compelling with the complexity what we're creating between components and between like even anything you attach to a component, whether it be provenance, it could be, would benefit from a type. So
yeah.
And we also validated just S-bombs, right, with our schema, so it didn't break anything. So, right.
I mean, I guess we could. I mean,
adding the secured by as a dependency type, right? So that.
I mean, secured by it would be the type exactly. So, the question is, it goes back to human readability versus programmatic readability. So people feel comfortable by saying related crypto materials, so they can see that name of that field if they're meant. The reality is that the complexity is always such you need a tool. I mean, like dependency track or something like that to understand the graph, right, and the relationships. And so, adding human names might feel comforting to us looking at the spec, today or in other contexts. But the reality is, a clear way to express the clear relation between components and services, the two topmost node widgets we have in our graph, will fit us over time.
I mean, one thing where we added it there is just because otherwise we couldn't add the mechanism as part of the relationship. So it's.
I mean, this related crypto materials, this is basically one big relationship block, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that we differentiate ourselves from. I think that as long as relationships are only, the meaning, the typing of them, sticks to the component service depends on stuff. Like I said, the major node widgets, and we don't try to do a whole big RDF model.
Yeah, no.
I think that's the right level of complexity that we need going forward.
So
we also had for this related crypto material, Lars had the use case to be able to describe like expiry date for any of those. So I just made a proposal on our GitHub still to actually merge this with keys. So because keys is also kind of a related crypto material, but keys already has these properties for expiration.
I think that, like, just one other comment to what I made earlier, and apologies, Basil. It goes back to relationship types. I'm trying to read what's in your brain from your pause and your facial structure. So, I think that, as long as we clearly, I think maybe if we want to, I get what I guess I'm reading into it is you see all these things are related. The thing that the key to what I said earlier is that all the metadata, all the relationship has to be cleared by just the type right now. And as long as there's no other baggage on the relationship type. So everything has to be part of a component, a cryptographic component or other component. It has to be, the relationship has to be cleared. So we have to have the right relationship type names to make it clear. And perhaps we might, just for, future proofing, you could add a description of the relationship if you want to, and or properties as well. So anyway, and that would not necessarily.
You're talking about the dependency types, right?
Yeah. So I'm saying as long as we add meaningful ones and it's a reduced enum of some type, where each name has clear meaning. And I guess my only concern is from a cryptographic point of view, how many different types will we have? Is it just enough to say that it's secured by or encrypted by? What are the names we have for what's the domain? What's the range of names we have for domain of names we have for cryptographically securing things? Because there's, this could be applied to hash algorithms or whatever. We need to be clear on the domain and what the words are.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it can be algorithms directly, or it can be protocols, right?
Right, that's the example I was thinking of too, right? You've got a service that is, again, you could say it's you could say that the service is protected by or secured by an algorithm, right? Or you could say it uses an algorithm, I guess.
Yeah, the thing is that picking the right verbs is key, and picking verbs that are abstracted so they can be used in more than one context would be really helpful.
Yeah, I created an example for services actually with IPsec, and there it uses dependency type as well. So the idea is that you have a service, or let's say two VPN sites to provide this VPN service, and they use right. So that's a dependency type. They use IPsec with a certain configuration. So yeah, can be the question, right? Is this uses or is it secured by? Which might both apply in that case, right? So
right.
Might have to think about what's the best name there. If we can replace uses by secured by, if this applies always, or if there is really the need for a third entry there.
I think with the current version, the 1.5, we implement all relationships between crypto assets as part of those components. So there is actually no relationship between two crypto assets that needs to specify a dependency type. So it's always like a library uses a crypto asset, or the service uses a crypto asset or something, and the crypto asset has some is reference in itself to another crypto asset if it uses it. So actually we can then maybe reduce it to not using the uses, but using some domain specific for encryption or.
I was thinking about adding maybe another one called protects. So we've got implements, everything ends with a S. So implements, uses, and then protects. And so you could have a cryptographic asset and then a data component. And you could say that the cryptographic asset dependency type protects data. And then that same could possibly then be applicable to services as well. It's a well, I guess the services is kind of interesting because it could go either way, right? You could use an algorithm, or you could say the algorithm protects the service.
Yeah, but why would it uses an algorithm without protecting?
Well, if I have a service component, if I have a service, I guess you could say the service uses TLS, or you could say TLS protects service. So I guess that would be a case where both would be applicable, maybe.
Would be kind of the opposite direction of the relationship.
Right.
In cases, so the service uses a crypto asset, or the crypto asset protects the service.
Yeah, so that's why.
I'm sorry. I just had to step away for a minute, so perhaps I'm lost. But I think I see a dependency type. Like I see like a small subset of verbs. Like I said, it's direction. I think it was Basil was saying. So it's when you're looking at a component, it looks like it's implements something. It's always the component itself, the one node of the graph, the to the source to target, I guess, source to target nodes. So source node implements target node, source node uses target node, source node secured by target node. So I think that, you know, playing with secured, I think there's always a secured by, meaning that something in the past had been, the target node had been applied to the source node, that you know, I'm playing with that in my brain, Steve.
Okay.
So
Yeah.
I think that in the spec we have other algorithms, and so secured by could be, you know, a paradigm we have, like, you know, for a generic algorithm, could say applied or something like something. What do you use for a general equation? It's like a hash algorithm or some other something was encoded by, you know, you could have like a vocabulary. So that means so it means that it kind of like reverses the relationship, saying in order to decipher, or how, you know, it basically is calculated by, that's what I was looking for, calculated by, or something like that, is a more generic abstract term that could be used for other algorithm types. Anyway, so you could reduce this. I'm trying to look to create an abstraction and reduce the set of terms. But I think in terms of security is so meaningful that it deserves its own set of dependency type verbs, if you will.
Yeah.
Meaningful to all of BOM. So. And I think that there's a conversation then that in terms of security controls, there might be, like, you know, how controls are, you know, if you start listening, I know that we're looking at security frameworks, SIDF, PCI, or whatever, you know, there could be relationships drawn to some framework control or something like that potentially as well in the future. But yeah.
Right. So in this particular case, you're suggesting that we have a new dependency type called protected by, or something similar, where we could specify the data is then dependency type protected by the cryptographic asset. Is that source? And then, okay.
I mean, pick you know, discuss the names, semantics need to be meaningful. So right. Secured by might be just a good generic term. Anyway, because protected, you know, the question is go to our dictionary, Webster's dictionary,
right?
And, you know, see what the appropriate term is that captures our domain and is inclusive of cryptography, but is not as expansive, that basically means like a security guard, you know, or, you know, something that, you know, is not a component or a service, basically, or not a, I don't know.
Right. Yeah, because I'm trying to like think of like hardware cases, other things, you know.
Oh yeah,
have...
hardware would be a good domain to test it against.
Yeah.
But, you know, like in the terms of like a workflow, like a formulation, you know, this is something I would, you know, I would look to use as a relationship type of dependency. You know, when I described like ephemeral keys being used to secure data between tasks in a workflow, or if I have inputs or outputs from a task in a workflow, you know, how I could say how they were secured, what they were secured by. I could point to another component that secured them, if you will.
Yep.
Yeah. And like with crypto, it's also like if you have secured by, it can mean that the data is encrypted, right? Or that the data is authenticated, or that the data is mutually authenticated. So there can be different types there as well, right? So I think that's also might be also something in this memorandum, this OMB memorandum, where they want to know what the cryptographic system, what it provides, what does it what security provides.
Yeah, so again, we don't want verb overrun.
No.
At this point, maybe later on. So I mean, that's why I would advocate going back in time, having a URN, so we could add secure, you know, secured by, or
and
then add to it later on.
I think maybe what just trying to, or what it's maybe best to choose a verb that is generic, right? So it doesn't mean that it's encrypted, right? And excludes other types of security guarantees. And
then what I always said, then I would add, then if you want, you could add a properties array if you want to optionally, if people want to add domain specific meaning to it, but leave it just have the fewest high level things. Ironically, if I may share, the proof of concept I'm working on for a customer with Watson AI is basically taking unknown database data in CSV table format and trying to derive relationships between columns of data with only the database tables. So I am really been studying, ironically, it didn't occur to me about 10 minutes ago, what you were talking about here, which is trying, the relationships I'm coming up with from the AI is giving us are very generic names, right? Age relates to person, those type of things. So it's just funny that creating a limited vocabulary, the more meaningful you make it, the more helpful it is in a processing context. Because the company wants you to spit out AI like interpretation of the data, so they can hand it to a business analyst who can develop an application. Anyway.
Yeah. I was trying to think of a situation that maybe uses TPM, like the hardware modules, like on a like a Windows PC, for example.
Then I think secured by, the question is, do you do encrypted by, the question is, can you do secured by as a high level concept? And I think encryption is an important concept. I think I can't escape it the more I tease use cases, but hardware platforms, trusted platforms, it's all encrypted. So the question, you have to have a dependency of who it was encrypted by, basically, because you typically have a service, a trusted platform, a service that validates your components or the entire operating system or the entire thing. So you have a service which would be, you could be, say, secured by in a generic context, but it's really encrypted by. So that's the concern. When I'm thinking about the system, my concern is I need it to be that I can decrypt it, basically. In generic, it's secured by, but I'd like to know it's encrypted too. Anyway.
Right. Yeah. So I think secured by is really interesting because it, if you have a relationship where you have, data is secured by, a cryptographic asset, well, knowing the type of component that's a cryptographic asset, and that in fact it uses a cryptographic algorithm for encryption, that actually tells you more about that relationship. Likewise, if you also have, I'm thinking about a use case where you have a laptop and it's got one of those physical keys that locks the laptop to the docking station, well, you could say this laptop is secured by this hardware lock.
Yeah, I think, exactly. And I think that, like, going to my old days of key blocks, I could have some key management blocks and device keys, which could both be secured by, they both be on the device. You'd have a key block, or would come into the domain of the device. And those could be secured by two different assets, a key block and a device key. But then it would also have some connection to a service, service that would be used for DRM decryption potentially. I'm using DRM, but we didn't use DRM. So you'd have a service that you'd have to call with your, that would basically supply the key or create a device key. Who owns the domain of, would you have some DRM service like Apple Security, or Microsoft, whatever.
Right.
So I think you'd have to draw out use cases and see, and look at, from a small set of adding secured by to this in enum, dependency type enum, and with uses and implements, see if we can create meaningful stories between components and services. I think that's a task all of our work groups will probably need to do. But I think security is a great domain to tease us out in, because we could, I think we could easily write down some of these scenarios and draw on a whiteboard, the big components, and see if these verbs make sense, or they confuse the story. If I'm getting crap out of my AI right now, the relationships are total bunk. I'm trying to teach better relationships. The question if I tell a story between, component name, a component type, a dependency type, and a component type, can I infer a good story?
If these are the verbs that we, so maybe next week, because if we're running out of time for this week, but maybe next week we start flushing this out. These dependency types, I think this is probably the most important thing we need to potentially work on. And then once we kind of flesh out this with some use cases, we need to come up with very crisp definitions for each one of these types. As well as think about whether or not we're going to have a default type or not, because that also needs to be considered.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think we are
Awesome.
maybe good to look at the use case for that, or if it's if we, I mean, many of the crypto assets are kind of self-describing like algorithms because they have a algorithm primitive like a block cipher, right? Does encryption and message authentication code does authentication. So that's already implies what it does, right? So that might be already covered by this. So so it's I think it's a good exercise to look at the dependency types and see how it can meaningfully cover that.
Okay. Very good. I'm gonna go ahead and I just added it real quick just so we have something to look at. But I'm gonna go ahead and I have not checked this in, by the way, because I think it still needs a lot of discussion. But let's see, I did add it to my working copy that I have. So I'm just going to go ahead and send out the HTML version of this. That way you have something more visual to kind of play with. I'll go ahead and publish this in the Slack channel so you can kind of view this offline and whatnot, and just kind of see the different things that we were talking about. Other than that, does anybody have any last minute things that they wanted to bring up today?
Not from my side.
From me, Lisa.
Okay. All right, Nicholas, as always, Nicholas, Matt, Basil, thank you so much for all of your contributions and everything that you do. I'll go ahead and post this on the Slack channel and the recording on YouTube later today. And I wish you all have a great rest of your day.
Cheers all.
All right, cheers.
Thank you, Steve. Bye-bye.
Right.